Good morning and welcome to today's video from Yoker Evangelical Church. Today it's Saturday the 11th of July, and in our Bible reading plan this morning we read Joshua chapters 14 and 15 and Psalms 146 and 147. And in this video I want to talk about a repetition that I noticed this morning in Joshua chapter 14. And whenever we notice repetitions in the Bible, it's always there for a reason. And usually it's because the author wants to draw our attention to a particular phrase. He wants us to really notice that something is going on. That's why he says it again and again. And in Joshua chapter 14, the phrase that we keep seeing coming up talking about Caleb is, he followed the Lord wholeheartedly. He followed the Lord wholeheartedly. It's that sense of following and having a completely undivided heart. He's not got any other interests. He's not divided in the way that he's following God. It's not like he's on the fence and trying to live two lives. Caleb is a man who has said, I am going to follow God with every ounce of strength that I have. And we see in this chapter a couple of things that will do. So when we first see it in verse 8, it is clear that it will set somebody apart to follow God wholeheartedly. When in the last words of verse 8, Caleb declares, I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. That is in contrast to the other men that had gone on this spying trip into Canaan. As Caleb reflects back, he sees, well, those men were scared because they weren't following God. But I was different because I followed God wholeheartedly. It shows us that not everybody will do this. This is not an automatic description of somebody who says they follow God. There will be people who follow God not wholeheartedly. And I think that's a real warning to us that this is not our default setting. That we need to be careful if we think we are doing this, that we truly are pursuing God with all our lives. But we also see that following God wholeheartedly is worth an inheritance. Just look at what Caleb says in verse 9. So on that day Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Because Caleb followed the Lord wholeheartedly, Moses said to him on behalf of God, that land's going to be yours. You have an inheritance to celebrate because you follow God wholeheartedly. We should prize this highly because God clearly does. God looks on people that follow him wholeheartedly and says that is worth an inheritance to them. And as we read on through the Bible, and we will do in our Bible reading plan, we see that this standard becomes the benchmark of leadership. All future leaders are in some ways held up against this standard of Caleb following God wholeheartedly. And though sadly we see that none of them truly meet that mark, some of them get very, very close to it, but there's always areas in their lives where we see that they have selfish interests and where they're not truly putting God first. All the Old Testament leaders failed to meet this standard. Even Caleb would have at points in his life. And that is why it is so good to look at Jesus and see how he perfectly fulfills this. He is the one who follows God without any reservations in his heart, without any hesitations, who truly can say, I follow God wholeheartedly. And that is why we today, we don't need to read these words and think, I need to try harder at following God. We need to look to the one who followed God wholeheartedly, perfectly, and look to him as our leader, our saviour, our king, not trusting in our own power to follow, simply looking at him, because it is through him that we are saved and made one with him. It is through him that he will make us more wholehearted in our love for God. To follow God wholeheartedly is the greatest privilege that a human being can have. It is to fulfill our true purpose. And the way that we can know that this morning is by following Christ, who does that perfectly. He follows God wholeheartedly, that we might celebrate it. I hope you have a great day today, and God bless.